to greet you in the name of Jesus, the one that, even though he knew all things, it says he still loved his own, and he loved them to the end. Love the Brotherhood. I wonder if I could go into your communities this morning, each one of the churches that's represented, and just walk down the street of the little town that's close there, and just ask people, say, what is the most outstanding characteristic of you fill in your church name, of the Mennonite church? What would you say, what are they known for? What sets them apart from the other churches, from other people in the community? I wonder what the answers would be. Oh, they're the ones that they wear those plain dresses, and they dress plainly, and the ladies wear those cap things. Or would it be those good workers? Those people are industrious. They know how to do a job well. They're worth hiring if you're an employer. Or maybe about a state here probably a month ago. And according to the conversation that was going, maybe you would have heard something like this: those are some serious fishermen, and you ought to see their boats. I wonder what they would say. I wonder what answers I would get. What sets your church apart? 1 Peter 2:17 says, honor all men, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king. 4 just concise commands, and love the brotherhood is just kind of sandwiched right in there. What's the context? What's happening here? And by the way, the verb there in the original would have had the idea of you are already loving, keep on loving. It's an imperative. It's something that needs to keep happening. Well, turn with me to 1 Peter. I want to back up and read just a few verses that come before that and see what is the context here, what was being said. 1 Peter chapter 2. I'm going to begin reading in verse 9. But ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, that ye should show forth the praises of him who hath called you out of darkness into his marvelous light, which in time past were not a people, but are now the people of God, which have not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy. Dearly beloved, I beseech you as strangers and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lusts, which war against the soul, having your conversation, your lifestyle, honest among the Gentiles, that whereas they speak against you as evildoers, they may by your good works, which they shall behold, glorify God in the day of visitation. I think as we concentrate on those verses, it gives us a little bit of the setting of what was happening here. Peter was telling the church here, and I believe I don't think it was mostly Jews, I think it was more Gentiles. So he wasn't talking to some of his own people, but he was talking to Gentiles that were now Christians, they were now believers. And he's saying, this is who you are as believers. You say you're a born-again believer, you are a disciple of Jesus. This is who you are. And he lays it out there in verse 9. He says, you're a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, which just simply means God's own special people. And especially when you think of verse 10, he says, well, we were not, but now we are. He said in the past, we were not even a people, but now we are not just somebody, but we are the people of God. We didn't have obtained mercy, but now we have all obtained mercy. You think about all of those blessings that we have. He's saying, this is who you are. Know that. rejoice in that. But then, what follows, beginning in verse 11 and going on through chapter 4, at least partway through chapter 4, if not the whole way, he's laying out some specific lifestyles that we should have as believers. He says in verse 11, I beseech you as strangers and children, abstain from fleshly lusts. And then in verse 12, he talks about having a conversation honest among the Gentiles. You know, if we say we're believers, I'm a Christian, shouldn't our life back that up? I often think of that on the job. I think our occupation, our job, is one of the best missionary fields that we can have. Because not only do we see somebody and speak truth, we speak the gospel like we heard from the brother, but they should be able to see the gospel at work in our life. If we're not ashamed. And it's hard to argue against a life lived differently because we are a chosen people, because we are the people of God. And that's what he's saying. He's saying, your lives are changed. And now your daily lifestyle should also be changed. And he goes through and he talks about a bunch of things in those next chapters. What we want to look at is there in verse 17, like I said, just standing in there, love the brotherhood. It almost seems like a command that's unnecessary. We're all Christians. Come on. We know how to live. We've been changed. We're forgiving people. We're kind. We're loving, right? It almost seems like an unnecessary command. And I think we all know that it isn't. Love the brotherhood. God doesn't put things in his word just to take up space. So it's something that we need an encouragement on, something we need to be taught how to do well. He actually states our purpose there in verse 9. Why has all this happened to us? What is the purpose of our different life? It's right there in the middle of the verse. That we should show forth the praises of him who hath called us out of darkness into his marvelous light. It's not to draw attention to our churches. It's not to draw attention even so much to our changed life. But through those things, it draws attention to God. And it hopefully will make them want that also. That's our purpose. That's the purpose of living a life. That's a large part of the purpose of loving the brotherhood. And there's also other reasons that come along behind it. So, again, if we say we're believers, but I'm no different than the other guys on the job. I live the same way they do. I respond to in the same manner that they do when situations come up. Am I truly born again? Am I really one of those chosen generation, royal priesthood? Am I really a believer? We should be living differently. And I think most of this will be lived out in our local congregation. There's times, these meetings, there's times when there's maybe crisis somewhere else where we reach out, we share, or maybe times that we go and we serve somewhere and we reach out to the greater body of Christ. But most of this test of loving the brotherhood, where we get to practice that, is within the confines of our own church. And I believe that is where we will have a tremendous testimony in our community if we do that well. Let's look at a few other verses that talk about this subject. It seems Jesus had, at different times, things to say about this also. You can turn to John 13. I want to read just a couple verses there about love that Jesus had to say here in John 13. I'm just going to read verse 34 and verse 35. Jesus says, "A new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another. a little puzzling. A new commandment? Wait, they've been taught way back, beginning of their commands, laws from God. They've been taught, have they not? A new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another. And maybe here's at least part of the answer. As I have loved you, that you also love one another. Jesus just raised the bar so much higher. As I have loved you. Verse 35, by this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if ye have love one to another. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples. By what? It's by love. You know, we can go to church every time the doors are open. We can read our Bible every day, pray. We can live in a simple lifestyle. We can dress simply, modestly. We can be good stewards, but not be caught up in materialism. And on, all of those good characteristics. But Jesus didn't say that that's how we'll be known as his disciples. He says, if you love. And honestly, as good as all those other things are, and necessary, if we do all those things and there isn't love, it's empty. I think later on we'll hear some of that. One of the brothers will be preaching from 1 Corinthians 13. It's just, like he says, a tinkling cymbal, sounding brass. That sounding brass has the idea of a brass vessel, and you bang on it, and there's this hollow sound that comes out of it. It has a form, it has the looks of something good, but it's empty, without love. So Jesus came back and he said, it's by your love. It's how you live with each other. It's how you do church life, community with each other, that people will say, that's a follower of Jesus. Now, I think Jesus, the people that heard Jesus at that time, they understood very clearly what he was saying. We're in a different culture, a different setting. We don't pick it up quite as well. But the rabbis, the teachers of that day, were often distinguished by something, some tenet of religion that they taught, or a certain lifestyle, or they would kind of focus on one particular thing. They would be known for that. Think of the Pharisees. Now that may not just one teacher, but they were known for being very strict about keeping the law. So if you would be a Pharisee and follow their teaching, you would adopt that lifestyle also. Be very careful, very sure to not break any of the multitude of laws that they had. Think of John the Baptist. What was he known for? He was a teacher. He was a rabbi, as it were, same time as Jesus, preceding him. He was known for his plain lifestyle. He lived out in the desert. He wore rough camel hair clothing. And he had very simple menu, just locusts and wild honey. And his followers were known for the same thing. Very austere lifestyle. Just simple, just basic, just plain. So that's what Jesus was saying. If you're my followers, you're going to follow what is the most basic, one of the most basic and important teachings that I have. And it was this love. That's what they were known for. He said, people will know that you're my follower. You're a learner of me. You are being taught by me, because your life will display that same love. As I have loved you. Jesus said that, and it wasn't that long later that he opened his arms and he died on the cross. He literally laid down his life. He said he would, and he did. We love to that level. And a bit later on, I'll get to some practical ways of loving each other. I found some quotes about early Christians. And Tertullian wrote, he said, "See," said they, "how they love one another and are ready to lay down their lives for each other." So he was quoting someone else. The next two are more in a scoffing manner. A heathen writer said, "Their lawgiver persuaded them they are all brethren," as if that was a negative thing. But you see, the proof of who they were, the proof that they were disciples of Jesus was coming through. Another one said, "They love one another even before they are acquainted." I like that. I don't even have to know you personally in order to actually have a love for you. That's what they were accused of, the early Christians. Interesting. And they were known to be Christ followers, Christians, because of that. So how can we live out in our church this love? How can we do that well? And I guess I'm just going to list some things. Hopefully it will spur your mind to think of other things also. Some things that I have observed in our community, in our church, things that maybe even have happened to us. One is visitation during sickness or during death. We had a fair amount of that over the past couple of years. And I heard different times, doctors and nurses, either heard it myself or heard it from family members, and the hospital staff was impressed by the amount of visitors that came. In fact, the one doctor said, he said, "Can I become a member of your church?" Now, I think he said it a bit facetiously, but he saw something. He wanted to be part of a caring community. So that's just a simple thing. The visitation during sickness and death. Helping with work needs. Just last night, our youth group went and had a work night at one of the younger couples of our church, up their house, helping with their garden, different kinds of things like that. Other times they will go and help widows. We have a fair number of widows at our church. And I actually, earlier this summer, I found out a very easy way to get the church men to come and help cut up a tree and get the firewood all split and stacked up. All you have to do is just cut your needles with a chainsaw and you come back home and everything's done. I wouldn't advise that, rather just go ask for help. But I like that. I like that when a church just steps up. There's a need and is so willing to just help out. It is a testimony to our community. People notice that. Helping with financial needs. Maybe it's a youth that goes to service. Maybe there's an extended illness. And the wager, the house, or the family can't is off his job for a while. There's just ways that we can reach out, because we aren't supposed to do good unto all men, but then he qualifies it a bit, he says, but especially to those who are the household of faith. So I think our first responsibility is to our home church, and then to the broader church. But then also, we can do this reaching out into our community also. When we moved back from our church, it was a small church then. I'd gone through a few years where some troubled years, and we came back to a pretty small church, but they had, unknown to us, they had been taking offerings, gathering some money, and when we came home, they had a sizable chunk of money to give to us, to just help us get assimilated back into life, stateside again. Besides all the personal cards and Visa cards, Rotary gift cards, all kinds of things. Love. It's lived out. If love is there, it will be lived out. Some other ways is bearing each other's burdens. How do we do that? By praying. we make our needs known. If we know someone is going through a hard time, they're facing some kind of struggle, just send them a text, give them a call, send them a card. I don't know how often that's happened for me. Somebody will either just check up on me or just say, one of the brothers from church, or they'll just say, I'm praying for you. That means so much. And oftentimes, there's something going on that they may not even be aware of, but the Lord prompted them to send that at the right time, to reach out, meet with someone for coffee, visit elderly, shut in, or ones that are sick, can't get out, have potty needs. There's just all kinds of ways that this is lived out in our daily lives. We need to be aware of what's happening. We need to be looking around and being willing to reach out. Jesus said, greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends, something along that order. And you know what? Oftentimes, when the call comes, someone needs help. Isn't it often on one of your busy days? It just seems like it kind of happens that way. And you have to make a choice. And we often think of life, I'd be willing to lay down my life. We think of something big. We think of, I'd make some big, flashy, sacrifice for my brother. Absolutely. Well, what about the little things? What about giving up your schedule? What about giving up your project that you really wanted to do? Or what about that money you were saving for something special that you just had enough, and now you can go purchase whatever it was, and then get one of those CAM newsletters in the mail. Are we willing to lay down our life? We're not willing to. I think that's more where we're tested in actually laying down our lives, is more on some of those little things. And probably, I guess they're not as little as we say they are, because we kind of stumble on it too much. What about just not speaking negatively about other church members to people outside of the church? They probably won't have a solution anyhow. They're not really involved in it. That's how we can love the brotherhood. We can train ourselves to focus on the good points of our church, individuals, to have a mindset that looks for the good. Different times that I've had conversations with people, and it seems some people are just bent the other way. And you point out something good, and well, yes, but, and they just want to go right on back to picking on that negative thing. That does not promote the love. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be honest, that we can never be honest. That's not what I'm saying. But there are ways to be honest, even admitting faults, but not be tearing down, without tearing down. Probably some of the hardest tests are when we're hurt. Someone starts spreading a rumor about it, something that they apparently think is true, and you're misrepresented. Sometimes there's trouble in the church, like I had mentioned, what had happened in our church, and people leave. Those are hard times. How do we still love the brotherhood in times like that? It was a real testing time. And yet, God has called us to that, to love the brotherhood. Not just when things are going well, but even in those times. I want to read a story with you from the Old Testament that has to do with this. Joshua 22. I'd like for you to follow through there. There's quite a bit of reading, and just going to take the time to read this whole story, because I'm guessing there's very many of us that either on a personal level or on a church level, we face something like this. How do you go about pursuing love? How do you go about mending relationships? And in Joshua 22, there's this story that I just think gives us some very good pointers when things are not going well. And this happened after they had pretty much done the conquest of Canaan, at least that the Israelites had come out of Egypt, gone through the wilderness. Joshua was their leader now, and they had completed the conquest to the point that they did. They didn't go as far as they should have. And now it was time for the 2.5 tribes to go back on the other side of Jordan where they had wanted to make their home. And so in Joshua 22, I'll begin reading in verse 9 and read to the end of the chapter. So it's be thinking, as we read through this story, be thinking about loving the brotherhood when things go wrong. What tips can I pick up how to work through a situation? Joshua 22, verse 9. And the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh returned and departed from the children of Israel out of Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan, to go unto the country of Gilead, to the land of their possession, whereof they were possessed, according to the word of the Lord by the hand of Moses. And when they came unto the borders of Jordan, that are in the land of Canaan, the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh built there an altar by Jordan, a great altar to see to. Verse 11, and the children of Israel heard say, Behold, the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh have built an altar over against the land of Canaan, in the borders of Jordan, at the passage of the children of Israel. And when the children of Israel heard of it, the whole congregation of the children of Israel gathered themselves together at Shiloh to go up to war against them. And the children of Israel sent unto the children of Reuben, and to the children of Gad, and to the half-tribe of Manasseh, unto the land of Gilead, into the land of Gilead, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar the priest, and with him 10 princes, of each chief house a prince throughout all the tribes of Israel, and each one was a head of the house of their fathers among the thousands of Israel. And they came unto the children of Reuben, and to the children of Gad, and to the half-tribe of Manasseh, and to the land of Gilead, and they spake with them, saying, Thus saith the whole congregation of the Lord, What trespass is this that ye have committed against the God of Israel, to turn away this day from following the Lord, in that ye have builded you an altar, that you might rebel this day against the Lord? Is the iniquity of Peor too little for us, from which we are not cleansed until this day, although there was a plague in the congregation of the Lord, but that ye must turn away this day from following the Lord? And it will be, seeing ye rebel today against the Lord, that tomorrow he will be wroth with the whole congregation of Israel. Notwithstanding, if the land of your possession be unclean, then pass ye over into the land of the possession of the Lord, wherein the Lord's tabernacle dwelleth, and take possession among us. But rebel not against the Lord, nor rebel against us, in building you an altar beside the altar of the Lord our God. Did not Achan the son of Zerah commit trespass in the accursed thing? And wrath fell on all the congregation of Israel. And that man perished not alone in his iniquity. Then the children of Reuben and the children of Gad, the half-tribe of Manasseh, answered, and said unto the heads of the thousands of Israel, The Lord God of gods, the Lord God of gods, he knoweth, and Israel he shall know, if it be in rebellion or in transgression against the Lord. Save us not this day. That we have built us an altar to turn from following the Lord, or if to offer thereon burnt offerings or meat offerings, or if to offer peace offerings thereon, let the Lord himself require it. And if we have not rather done it for fear of this thing, saying, In time to come your children might speak unto our children, saying, What have ye to do with the Lord God of Israel? For the Lord hath made Jordan a border between us and you, ye children of Reuben and children of Gad. Ye have no part in the Lord, so shall your children make our children cease from fearing the Lord. Therefore we said, Let us now prepare to build us an altar, not for the burnt offering nor for sacrifice, but that it may be a witness between us and you and our generations after us, that we might do the service of the Lord before him with our burnt offerings and with our sacrifices and with our peace offerings, that your children may not say to our children in time to come, Give and part of the Lord. Therefore said we, that it shall be, when they should so say to us or to our generations in time to come, that we may say again, Behold, the pattern of the altar of the Lord, which our fathers made, not for burnt offerings, nor for sacrifices, but it is a witness between us and you. God forbid that we should rebel against the Lord and turn this day from following the Lord, to build an altar for burnt offerings, for meat offerings, or for sacrifices, beside the altar of the Lord our God that is before his tabernacle. And when Phinehas, the priest, and the princes of the congregation, and the heads of the thousands of Israel which were with him, heard the word that the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the children of Manasseh spake, it pleased them. And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar the priest, said it to the children of Reuben, and to the children of Gad, and to the children of Manasseh, This day we perceive that the Lord is among us, because ye have not committed this trespass against the Lord. Now ye have delivered the children of Israel out of the hand of the Lord. And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar the priest, and the princes returned from the children of Reuben and from the children of Gad out of the land of Gilead unto the land of Canaan to the children of Israel, and brought them word again. And the thing pleased the children of Israel, and the children of Israel blessed God, and did not intend to go up against them in battle to destroy the land wherein the children of Reuben and Gad dwelt. And the children of Reuben and the children of Gad called the altar En. For it shall be a witness between us that the Lord is God. I like that story. And it gives us some practical ways that we can follow if there is something that comes up. There's a misunderstanding. That's what happened here. Let's just reflect back just a little bit in verse 11. And the children of Israel heard say, Isn't that how it happened? Did you hear? And then the story begins. And then it gets passed on. And probably unintentionally embellished, wrong information, heard say. And then, verse 12 says the whole congregation of children of Israel gathered themselves together to go up to war against them. Now, I want to be careful. Verse 12, it's not all negative. And we see that by what Phinehas the priest and the princes said to these 2.5 tribes when they came. They saw that what they had done, and actually, in building this altar, they had transgressed against what God had told them. If you go back into Leviticus and Deuteronomy, you will find where they were commanded that these sacrifices were only to be made at the certain altar of the Lord. This, they were only supposed to do it at a city that was going to be appointed. So there was an assumption on their part. They thought on the 9.5 tribes. They assumed that this was an altar for sacrifices, for burnt offerings. It wasn't. But they were willing to take a stand for truth. That's the good part. And they were willing to confront what was happening. But they did it in a good way. So, what the children of Israel did, they appointed Phinehas, the son of Eleazar the priest. And if you think back on some stories, he was a man that had proved himself. Can't say all the details right now, but once when there was whoredom being committed, he was the one that went in and did something that stopped the whole thing. And so different times he had proven himself to be a man of integrity, a man of wisdom. So they chose him to lead a delegation, and then they also chose 10 princes to go and to meet with these 2.5 tribes. That was wise on their part. And when they came, they asked questions. Instead of coming with an accusation, they started asking some questions. But they also brought their concerns. They said, hey, we're also going to face judgment. If you do this thing, and if it is what it really looks like it is, and you're trespassing against God, we're afraid that judgment is going to come on all of us. So they weren't afraid to speak truth. but they came asking questions, not just hurling accusations against him. Even though the rest of them were back there, they knew that they had all the backing they needed because they were ready for war. They were ready to move in, take care of the situation. But they came, they inquired, they asked questions. I think we do well to remember that. Otherwise, we come in judgment. We think we know. So often, I have often heard people say, well, I know exactly why he did that. And when you question them, oh, did he admit that? Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure I know, but yeah, let's be careful. We don't always know what the motivation is, because when they asked the question, and these 2.5 tribes were then permitted to speak, and this delegation listened well, very key also, they listened, and they heard, and they said, basically the 2.5 tribes said, look, if we've committed evil, we will accept punishment from the Lord. But that's not what we were doing. We simply put it up. It's built in the same style as the altar of the Lord back in Shiloh. And it is simply for a remembrance and a guard against these tribes on the other side of Jordan, that they won't come and tell our smaller group over here, tell our children's children, you're not part of us anymore. Look at this border between us, the Jordan River, and whatever other ways that would have happened. But no, this was a symbol that we are also a part of this congregation. And when that was all understood, that was all, they were willing, this delegation that came, led by Phineas, they understood what had happened, and then they blessed them. It says in verse 30, it pleased them. They knew what their motivations were. And a tremendous tragedy was averted. And they were still one group. They were still united at the end of it. Because then this delegation went back and told them what had happened, told them what their purpose was, and again in verse 33 it says, and the king pleased the children of Israel. And the children of Israel blessed God, and they put away their swords, and they loved the brotherhood. Now that sounds simple. It sounds easy almost. And yet I think we all know that it takes tremendous commitment. And sometimes it takes way more than just one meeting. And it takes work. It takes commitment. And that's what love is. Love is a commitment. Love isn't just the warm, fuzzy feeling that, we sometimes tend to think about love. But it is being committed. Bottom line is we are committed to each other regardless of what happens. We're willing, like they were here, to address issues, to look at them, to work our way through them, to try to understand each other. But it is a commitment. Too often, we love like a sawzall. Back in 51, Milwaukee Tool, invented the first sawzall. And technically it's called a reciprocating saw because it has this action. And that's how we love a lot of times. You're nice to me, so I'll be nice to you. You came and cut up my firewood, I'm willing to come over and help you. But as soon as that stops, that's it. If you're not nice to me anymore, you say something nasty or you spread a lie about me, and then the love's gone. I wonder if that's where some of our problems begin. Let's not love like a sawzall. Let's just be committed and let's love well. It doesn't matter what is said, but there is still a commitment, still a love that keeps on giving. That is what will win today. It's not easy, and there's a lot of different details that vary from case to case, things to work through. I recognize that. And yet, if there isn't that bottom line of that commitment of love and loving the brotherhood, then we for sure will not be able to work our way through it. Can we love unconditionally? That's what Jesus did. Like I mentioned before, laid down his life for his friends. Romans 5:8 says it very clearly. It says, but God commended his love toward us in that, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And so God set that perfect example. He loved us not when we were his friends, not when we were his followers, but before we were. In fact, Romans in those places, when we were the enemies of God, he loved us. Can we do the same? If we are truly disciples of Jesus, can we do the same that he did? Love unto the end. Love unconditionally. I just want to close with two verses in 1 Thessalonians 3. It says, and the Lord make you to increase and abound in love one toward another, and toward all men, even as we do toward you. To the end he may establish your hearts unblameable in holiness before God, even our Father, at the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ with all his saints. When I read that verse a couple weeks ago, it was the memory verse for our Sunday school lesson. Of course, I had this sermon on my mind, so that really caught my attention. But if I read verse 13 correctly there, he says, well, the first verse, he's saying, the Lord make you increase and abound in love one toward another. Why? To the end, to this cause, that your hearts may be established unblameable in holiness before God. To me, it sounds like loving the brotherhood is an integral ingredient in having my heart established in holiness before God. May God grant each of you an abounding love for the brotherhood.